Today we're going to look at how to assemble our smart greenhouse kit. And this is the Kitronix sort of environmental board-based smart greenhouse. Now once you've got all your equipment out, we're going to check we've got everything before we look at how to actually start assembling the kit. So what you should have is your actual plastic greenhouse in. Now we've got a base and we've got the little shell that goes on it. So in here, this is where everything is going to go. The soil will go in here, water will go in here, the board sits here, and everything else goes in and around it. And we've got obviously the cover. You'll also have 3 rechargeable batteries, and these will charge up using the solar panel. We've got the environmental monitoring board itself that everything connects to, including the microbit. You can see the slot here. You'll have 2 crocodile clips to connect the moisture sensor. You've got a water pump, which has a wire on it. This screws into the board. We've got a lead for connecting our zip LEDs here. So these are color changing ones that are going to sit over the top. And we've got a little screwdriver screwing into the terminals, because on the board our solar panel has wires and we have to screw that in, as well as our water pump to make sure that's connected. And actually it screws in as far away from the water as it can be. So that's what you should have. So take a minute to make sure you've got everything, and then when you're ready we can move on to how we start assembling the kit. Right, so here now we're going to start by looking at how to connect our solar panel to the board and putting the batteries in. And for doing this, we will need our screwdriver. I'm actually going to start by putting the batteries in, because that's probably the simplest thing. I'm going to flip the board over, and you should all be familiar with putting batteries in, but just in case, obviously we've got the positive and the negative. The kind of raised end of the battery is the positive. You can see there is a picture in the bottom of the board. So we put the flat side of the battery against the spring. So put all 3 of these on, and because we're using a solar panel, because reusable energy, and it's very important, these are rechargeable batteries. So as the solar panel is running, these batteries will charge. Now it's very slow, but it will charge the batteries. So we do have that advantage there of not having to change them all the time. So once you put your batteries in, flip the board over, and we can start to look at how we're going to attach the solar panel. Now, here's my solar panel. And if I flip it over, and importantly, first of all, you can see I've got positive and negative. And this is really important to make sure we put them in the right place. And we've got our red and our black wire. So our red wire is our positive, and our black wire is our negative. So I'm just going to put my solar panel down so I can see my wires coming across. We're going to have a look at the board. And this first terminal here, and it does say here, it's hard to read, you can't really see it. This is where the solar panel connects. And if we look, we've got positive and we've got negative on there. And you'll be able to see the little plus and the little minus on there. And you can see they're just there at the start here. So I'm going to attach my red wire into here and my black wire into here. First thing to do, if you've not done it, is to take your screwdriver, put it in, and undo the screws so they are raised up, which opens up the terminal here. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to take my red wire. I'm going to do them one at a time. I'm going to place that in, and I'm just going to hold it in place so the wire doesn't slip out, and I'm going to screw down until it won't go any further. You'll be able to feel when it starts to grip the wire. So that's in there, and then I'm going to do exactly the same with the black wire. I'm going to put that and push it right into the terminal. I'm going to hold it down with my finger, and I put my screwdriver in. I'm going to turn it, and it's clockwise to tighten them up. We've got it all line in righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. And tighten that in. So that's in there, and there we are. So that's now the power set up for my greenhouse board. What we're going to do next is we're going to look at how to attach the water pump to it, because that's the other bit we need to screw in. Everything else is done with the crocodile clips, or there's a socket on the board. So here we've got our board, the solar panels attached off here, and then we've got our submersible water pump. That it sits in the water trough on the tray, and as it needs to trigger, it will then suck water up and it's squirted out through the spout here. That's this bit. The water is sucked up through the bottom here. The wire, instead of red and blue, we've got red and black, but red is our positive again, so our white is the negative wire. So you'll need your little screwdriver again. So we'll take the board. Here it is. It's the middle socket this time, the middle terminal. This is pin 13. This is where the code defaults to for our high power. So I'm going to take my wires. I'm going to make sure I have unscrewed the terminals, so there's space for me to insert the wire. And again, just like with the solar panel, I'm going to put in the positive, and I'm just going to make sure that's in there, and I'm going to hold it with my finger. You can see I've got my finger just holding the wire in as I go through and screw down the terminal. This is the last time you'll need to use the screwdriver, putting them together. If when you're doing it, and it can be quite fiddly because the wires are so thin, don't worry if it pops out. You know, you can check at the end. Once you've screwed them in, you don't tug them, but gently you'll be able to see. So the last time you'll need the screwdriver, so you can put that back down with the rest of the ingredients. But now we've got our board basically hardwired and connected to it. We've got our solar panel here, and we've got a water pump here. So what we're going to do now, in the next bit, we're going to look at how we position the board in the tray, and we're going to attach the soil moisture probe. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to look at attaching our soil moisture probe here. Now you can see it's got 3 connectors on, so what's we've done, we've added another crocodile clip set here. So we've got 3, so you'll have those in your kit, don't worry. But we've got our ground, our 3 volt, and our pin number here. So this is going to go onto pin 0, and we've got corresponding sections to connect them to here on the actual board. So we have pin 0, 1 and 2. We've got our 3 volt connectors, and we've got our ground connectors here. So we've got to connect everything up. So we've got the tray here. So first I'm going to take my soil probe. I'm going to put my green onto 0. Now you can connect them as long as it's touching this copper part here. It's fine, but you'll probably end up needing them in at 90 degrees. So if I hold it like this, I'm just going to take my crocodile clip. I'm going to put it in there. Do pay attention to which is connected to which. My red is going to go on my 3 volt, which is the middle one. It says 3V on it. And my yellow one here is going to get connected to ground. So they're all on there. You might find you change the position of them slightly as it goes into the soil to make sure it sort of aligns properly so things aren't tweaked. But before we connect these to the board, we're going to put the board and we're going to put other bits in place. So here I've got my tray. This is where the board sits, where it says we've got the logo on there. We've got our soil, I say, and this is our reservoir for water. You can see quite clearly there is a space here for the pump to sit in. So I'm going to take my board, I'm going to sit it in there with the edge connector for the microbit closest towards me, so furthest away from the far end of it. I'm going to take the pump and I'm going to move that and I'm going to sit that in its place there. And the reason I've done that is because I want to keep its wire pinned down by using the crocodile clips from here. So now I'm just going to line things up to where they are. Now, green is my pin 0. If I bring this down, so you can see a little bit clearer. So my green crocodile clip is pin 0. So I'm going to connect that there. My red is connected to 3 volt. So that goes here. And I'm putting them all on the first set. And my yellow, I'm going to trap that wire under there. And my yellow one is going to go to ground, which is here. And again, I'm going to connect it to there. As for the ground and the 3 volt ones, it doesn't really matter which of those they go into. So I'm going to do so now. So there's our whole thing. And here it's in there. And we, again, to get that to stay, we can just adjust those slightly. Once the lid goes on, it'll all get held in place. But now we've wired up our soil probe. So that's in a good position. And actually there's quite good because the water's going to squirt in to there. So we'll get that reading nice and quickly. So now we're at that point. The next bit is to set up the LEDs and to get those connected to the board. And then we shall move on and just put the lid on and see how the whole thing looks. Okay, so here we've got our LED strip. I'll just bring them so you can see it. There are 5 of them, and these are color changing NeoPixels, so we can represent any color. So as we need to tweak the wavelengths or the frequencies of light, we can do that. And this connection, see, we've got a little connector here where you can put it on, and this matches up with our wire here that's going to go into a board. And quite simply, we just connect it. Now we're going to take black as ground off this one. So it's simply, we line it up and we push it in. And in terms of connecting it to a board, we just got to remember which way round to put the plug in. You see we've got our black there, so we know that our black needs to go to ground. So here we are at the board. I'm just going to use my screwdriver as a bit of a pointer here. But obviously we've got our connector here for our LEDs, and we've just got to plug this into the board. And here is the socket. We've got two because we've got one for a servo that we could use that we're not in this case. And here we've got the socket for this LED strip. And we just got to plug the connector in. Now remember we set black as ground. So we can see here, this first pin says ground. That's this socket here. So I'm going to take my plug, making sure the black wire is out there. I'm going to line it up there, and I'm just going to push it gently into there, and that's in. So that's connected to the board now. So here is the strip. So if I just lift this up, we can see everything's on there now. And what I do, I take the lid. This sits over the top. Solar panel out there. So there's the lid. This pixel strip then, and I've just added a little piece of tape to hold it in here. This pixel strip then sits in the indentation on the top. We can fix it down, piece of tape, and there. So that's over where our plants will grow. You see now everything's in there. It's all contained. We could put a bit of tape around the outside if we wanted once it's all in. But that is our finished setup. The only final thing to do would be to take the solar panel, and we can just put that on the top. And again, I've added a little piece of tape onto it. But there we go. That's our greenhouse all set up. So look, everything's in there, probe, and it's all contained. The shape here will help direct the water into it. But if that's not working, we could use a little bit of pipe. So let's set up. So now you're all ready to start actually creating the code for your greenhouse.